This is a special report from ABC News Digital.
I'm Dan Pfeffler in New York with this ABC News Digital special report. As they grieve for the young they lost 1 year ago, the world is looking to Newtown, Connecticut, asking how and if the healing has begun. Many of the 26 families who lost a loved one in that Sandy Hook massacre are reflecting on this first anniversary. The relatives of the children and the 6 teachers are unveiling a website, mysandyhookfamily.org, all to remember those 26 victims and to reach out to families. Also today, including in the remarks, some of those family members. Let's listen in.
And unalterably changed our lives. Since that day, we have been overwhelmed by the outpouring of kindness, love, prayers, generosity received from the entire world. To simply say thank you is not enough to express our sincere gratitude. In the midst of our grief, we have come to realize that we want our loved ones to be remembered for the lives they lived and how they touched our hearts. We have been uplifted by the support of so many people, and we would like to keep that spirit of unity and love alive in all we do to remember those we so dearly miss. It is with this in mind that we have created the mysandyhookfamily.org website. This website is intended to serve as a singular place of sharing, communication, and contact with the families of those who lost their lives that day. mysandyhookfamily.org allows us the opportunity to honor those taken from us so violently. Krista.
Hello, I'm Joanne. We ask that you understand that each of us, each family, is unique in our own experiences following this tragedy. And we each have our own voice and perspective. By creating this website, we hope to offer an opportunity to communicate with our families and honor the ones that we love, while at the same time respecting each family's individual journey and unique experiences. On the 1-year mark of this horrific day, we know that many people across the country will be thinking of our children and educators, so tragically taken from us, and wondering how to help. We ask that you consider performing an act of kindness or volunteering with a charitable organization in your own local community. We hope that some small measure of good may be returned to the world. This concludes our family statement. I'd like to add that our family will be lighting a candle on the eve of 12/14, the last night we spent with our sweet Charlotte.
And we will be lighting a candle for our beautiful little girl, Jessica.
We will be lighting a candle on behalf of Jessie McCord Lewis.
We're going to light a candle in honor of our daughter, Emily.
We will light a candle for my mom, Dawn Hochsprung.
We will light a candle for my older sister, Victoria.
We will be lighting a candle for my sweet boy, Jack.
We will be lighting a candle in honor of our beautiful girl, Grace.
We will be lighting a candle for our gorgeous daughter, Aviel.
We'll be lighting a candle for our beautiful daughter, Ana.
Vamos a prender una vela para Ana.
We will be lighting a candle for our sweet son, Daniel.
We'll be lighting a candle for my daughter, Lauren.
We will light a candle for Jace.
We will be lighting a candle for our irrepressible Benny.
That concludes the formal statement. Thank you.
And that is the conclusion of the remarks by some of the families affected by that tragedy 1 year ago. Families now celebrating the lives of those that they lost that day. The massacre at Sandy Hook obviously making a national impact, and now a website has been unveiled by those families to connect those that were affected. The website, My Sandy Hook Family. And of course, it was something that the entire nation had paused and recognized, and obviously in the reaction to that, there was legislation that had been proposed regarding gun control, and the debate then ensued. And now 1 year later, gun control advocates are making a strong case against automatic weapons, increased background checks, but nearly all efforts have stalled. For more on where we stand right now, I want to bring in our political director from Washington, D.C., Rick Klein. Rick, thank you for being with us. Obviously, it is impossible to think that it's been 1 year since that day, and there has been a lot of legislation, there has been a lot of push for additional gun control. Where are we at right now?
They came close, but they didn't get there. There was an effort about 6 months ago now to tighten up background checks, make near universal background checks on gun purchases, and it got excruciatingly close in the United States Senate, but it fell short. And since then, we have heard barely a whisper of new efforts to control guns. We have seen not just the Newtown families, but also Gabby Gifford's husband and Gabby Giffords herself, in addition to victims of gun violence in Colorado, for instance. Mayor Bloomberg, with his national push, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, all been involved in a major lobbying effort over the course of the last 12 months. But I got to say, they've got just about nothing to show for it. It is a deep disappointment to them. It's a deep disappointment to President Obama and to his allies that they haven't been able to get anything significant across the finish line.
Rick, as the face of those that were lost that day in Sandy Hook, and the president had made a personal appeal, and as you had mentioned, Gabby Giffords as well. From what we've learned, though, about the shooter, Adam Lanza, and his mother, did that legislation that was put up for proposal, would that have addressed, though, those concerns as far as increasing background checks?
Almost certainly not. In a case like this, having Adam Lanza's mother prepared to supply him with guns would have been an end around any kind of law. The mental health system, of course, is lacking in people that aren't adjudicated with a mental illness. And that highlights one of the problems in passing new gun control legislation, is that it is a fact that you can't stop everything, and that individual cases, when you actually draw back to the proposed legislation, it's hard to draw a straight line and say, if we had passed this, then we would have gotten that done. And I think there's an element in some of the emotional pleas by the families that they want to have something to show for the death of their loved ones. Once they get involved in politics, they want to be able to say that they made an achievement. And when you get into it, and you get into the details of the kind of gun legislation that's out there that might actually work, we're talking about pretty small incremental things. Even the background check system, the so-called gun show loophole, the idea that people inside of families are engaged in background checks. This is not a majority of gun transactions. It certainly isn't a majority of the guns that are used in terrible and violent acts. But the feeling that they had to channel their energies towards something, get something done, something achievable, something that they thought that could happen, the politics around they could massage. These are issues that poll very well. Even that, though, unable to pass in this environment.
At the time, it had seemed that there was momentum on the side for those that were advocating for further gun control. Has that momentum stopped?
It's gone. There really isn't any other discussion of it. Politics in Washington is a game of momentum and of capitalizing on moments. And there was a moment for gun control earlier this year, and in the wake of Newtown, you had many even very strongly NRA-endorsed politicians saying something's different now. There's something wrong with the country. They were sick of it. They were sick of the fact that we kept coming back to that kind of moment. And you felt like the politics could finally move, that this calcified politics around gun control finally cracking. And again, they got close, but that's all they got. And I think the other things started to happen, and other issues crowd the agenda, and that's used it as an excuse to shelve.
Town officials have asked the media to observe the privacy and the respect from those families that were affected by this. And at the same time, as you pointed out, though, in order to move legislation or create any kind of movement behind it, it does require a face and it does require a specific event. How tricky then is that politically to get something done if, in fact, there has to be that distance created from those families in Newtown?
Well, look, we hear this in the wake of every tragedy. People say this is not the time to focus on families in Congress or gun legislation, and I think the retort has been for a while now, when is the time? Because it never seems to be an appropriate time. The country focuses on episodes of gun violence at a sadly predictable clip of several times a year, where you know that it will happen. It will happen to somebody. There will be a mass shooting event. There will be talk about it, and we will be back probably where we started before. What seemed to make Newtown different was the presence of children and the emotional words, and just in that press conference, how hard it is to listen to as a parent anywhere in this country. That's what seems to change the politics on this. But I think right now, short of a major change in who's in power in Washington, it's hard to imagine any intervening event, no matter how horrible, changing the politics around this. I think people have made those judgments. They've made the judgments based on the policy and the politics both, and they just have not shown any likelihood to change it.
Rick, let me ask you this then. What do the prospects look like then, given the 2014 midterms fast approaching, as far as any kind of legislation or advancement on gun control?
I think pretty close to zero. But here's the interesting thing, Dan. You have a number of these groups that are trying to actively change the politics around gun control. They're making it as part of their mission, a vow to support candidates who vote for new gun control legislation and to try to oust candidates who oppose it. And if you can demonstrate to politicians that this is a way that this is an issue that your constituents feel strongly about, this is something you have to be concerned about when you actually cast votes, that has the potential to change things, because that's the power of the NRA. It's not like they have some kind of a secret code that they have cracked. All it is that they know that the issues that they get involved in are voting issues in many districts in many states around the country. So they are afraid of the backlash for anyone that would support any even modest new restrictions on gun ownership. If you can push that in the other direction and say we're going to hold politicians equally accountable for holding up new gun laws, then that's how you start something. And that's going to be one of the experiments and one of the things to watch in 2014 in races around the country. How active are the outside groups, including Gabby Gifford's group, including Mayor Bloomberg's group, including the Brady campaign, which has been around for 20 years now. How much do they get involved in races, and are they able to demonstrate that the politics of gun control are not just one-sided, that it's actually possible to support new gun controls and be rewarded for it politically?
The president made a very visual appeal in response to Sandy Hook going to Newtown for commemorative ceremonies, the First Lady as well, and promising that he would not rest before new laws were passed. In reality, though, where does gun control rank on the president's agenda today?
I wouldn't say he's resting, but he certainly isn't actively pushing it right now because he knows what the results are going to be. Unless you flip some votes in the Senate, you're not going to pass the Senate with 60 votes, and unless you flip a lot of votes in the House and put pressure on the leadership there, you're not going to get it done. There have been other issues that have taken up other time. The rollout of Obamacare has consumed much of the last 2 months. We have the budget crisis after budget crisis. Immigration reform also stalled in the House right now, another issue that the administration has gotten sidetracked on. And I haven't seen a lot of inclination or likelihood. I think White House officials are pretty honest in the fact that they feel like they need some kind of a outside force to move things along with this. There's nothing that they can do. The president can go give speeches every day between now and the midterm elections about gun control. It's not going to change the attitude of most members of the Republican caucus in particular in Congress that this is not something that's worth pursuing, and they don't feel the pressure to do it. They're certainly not going to bring it up on their own.
All right, ABC's political director, Rick Klein in Washington. Rick, thank you for that. We appreciate that. This has been an ABC News Digital Special Report 1 year after the tragedy at Sandy Hook. The families of those victims speaking out before that anniversary of that terrible day. A full write-up right here on abcnews.com. For now, I'm Dan Kleffler in New York.